I want to congratulate our friends at Oasis Foundation for the successful launch of the Oasis blockchain network. The Oasis blockchain is fast, extensible, privacy first, and Ethereum compatible. If you are a developer, check it out.
Data is the new oil. Data is the lifeblood of the internet. But until now, no one has really figured out how to refine that oil and turn it into rocket fuel. That's where Oasis comes in. They're putting companies in control of their data. They're finally bringing privacy into the data marketplace, and they're making it easier than ever to actually be able to share data in a nuanced and deliberate way.
Oasis platform is helping protect data privacy and also transforming data into insights for users. This will help promote the development of the whole blockchain ecosystem. Congrats on the successful launch of Oasis.
I'm pretty sure that the technology of data tokenization is one of the biggest innovations of the Oasis network. It will allow new applications on decentralized finances, health and cybersecurity, among others.
I'm Seed from Dragonfly, and I believe that privacy is essential for DeFi.
Privacy is a fundamental human right, especially when talking about our digital lives. That's why I'm excited to see that Oasis Network is bringing privacy onto the blockchain.
I'm excited for Oasis because privacy is a fundamental human right. Freedom is impossible without privacy, and the challenge of blockchains is balancing the needs of openness and auditability, which are public goods, with privacy, which is a private good.
Stakefish is extremely excited for the upcoming launch of the Oasis mainnet. Oasis has been one of the blockchain projects that have been always focused on privacy from the get-go. We've seen a lot of DeFi applications come out recently does not have any privacy features implemented in them. So therefore, I'm really excited to see how applications are going to be able to leverage Oasis to build privacy-first DeFi applications.
Technology around scalability and privacy is really differentiating, and we think they built up a great ecosystem around use cases that really do need privacy and scalability, like healthcare and DeFi. We really think Oasis Network can be a fundamental blockchain in the next 3 to 5 years.
I believe that Oasis can help to resolve modern blockchain problems.
First of all, the Oasis community is backed by a great core development team and blockchain veterans that are all driven by a vision that we need to overhaul the way data is accessed and controlled. Also, EVM-compatible paradigms are going to be a game changer for existing Ethereum dApps. They can access a private environment like never before.
Privacy is core to the blockchain value proposition, and I believe that Oasis will be a core piece of infrastructure that dApp developers are building on top of moving forward.
Privacy is important in blockchains because while blockchains provide a certain level of anonymity and confidentiality, it's important to keep highly sensitive data private and maintain that privacy, especially when you're executing on-chain transactions that are broadcasted publicly.
Nowadays, data is one of the most valuable assets. And ironically, it is the most vulnerable. And here comes Oasis Network, which strives to improve this missing point. That is why we are putting maximum effort into collaboration with the Oasis Network. And we are ready to contribute as much as possible.
What I really like about Oasis technology is that it's not just an improvement. It's a real revolution, more than an evolution, because before the blockchain, there was no technical tool to solve this problem.
Hello, folks. My name is Vishwa. I'm a privacy architect at Oasis. Today is an exciting day for us because we just released our mainnet. So I'm going to be taking a moment of your time to chat about our platform, which is a next generation blockchain platform that provides privacy, scalability, and is versatile. So the internet is an amazing platform for innovation, creativity, and free expression. But the internet lacks a mechanism for users to own their personal data. We have centralized services aggregating and controlling most of our personal information, and users have little to no control over how their data is used by these services. And users are not incentivized to participate in a data economy with data ownership and control. So what we need is the next generation of blockchain technology that can return data ownership to the individual by tokenizing data itself and enabling private DeFi. So this brings us to the Oasis network, which is a next generation blockchain platform built to enable data tokenization, privacy enhanced DeFi, and many more interesting applications. So the Oasis network is a layer 1 network. It's a privacy-first proof-of-stake decentralized network. It has two main components, the consensus layer and the paradigm layer. So the consensus layer is a decentralized set of validator nodes that operates a proof-of-stake blockchain. And the paradigm layer, which actually stands for the parallel runtime layer, can host multiple parallel runtimes, each a customized compute environment with shared state. So what is unique about the Oasis architecture is that we have separated out consensus from execution. And this gives us a lot of power and a lot of flexibility and advantages, as you'll see in the next slide. So the Oasis platform's unique advantages can be broken down into three different axes. On the scalability axis, parallel execution allows for fast transaction speeds and high throughput. We have a unique discrepancy detection mechanism that enables real-world scalability with smaller compute committee sizes. Large workloads execute in parallel and don't slow down other transactions. On the privacy axis, we are a privacy-first design that enables the next generation of privacy-enhanced DeFi, tokenized data, and a responsible data economy. Built-in privacy features make running a confidential paradigm quick and easy for any developer. And finally, tooling makes building a tokenized dApp quick and easy. And when it comes to versatility, paradigms are highly versatile and are able to support any use case. Because of the clean separation of concerns between consensus and execution environments can be tailor-made or purpose-built for different workloads. Like for instance, a paradigm that supports token transfers could be different from a paradigm that supports demanding workloads like machine learning training. Paradigm committees can be large or small, open or closed. They can be permissioned or permissionless, and they can coexist. And finally, easy-to-use developer tools and support for mainstream development languages like Python, JavaScript, Rust, C, C++ makes our platform very versatile. Here is an example use case. This is a partnership between Binance and Oasis Labs. So the problem that we're trying to solve over here is to address crypto theft. So crypto theft and attacks are on the rise. Crypto exchanges need to identify and ban bad actors. And the way in which we are enabling this is by letting exchanges share their threat intelligence. They have threat intelligence teams. They can share their threat intelligence to a joint pool of threat intel. And then the exchanges can run queries against this threat intel. And that way they can check if, for instance, wallet address is malicious as determined by the members of the alliance. And the unique properties of this platform are that the exchanges are not required to trust each other. The exchanges are not required to trust Oasis either. The data is kept confidentially and all the transactions are handled with end-to-end confidentiality. Here are a few other interesting and exciting projects that are being built on the Oasis network. So we have a Fortune 500 healthcare company that's using the Oasis network to enable consent-driven data capture and sharing with full transparency to all participants. Nebula Genomics is a genomics player that's using the Oasis network to give their customers insights with control over how their genomic data is actually being used. And they've launched publicly and are currently in beta. Castellease is another company that's using the Oasis network's privacy-preserving technology to enable machine learning workloads. So they're building an execution environment that can be used for machine learning training as well as to do predictive analytics. And finally, SafeRate is a company that's using the Oasis network to enable mortgage seekers to reduce their mortgage payments by reducing their mortgage rates based on neighborhood values. And they're matchmakers between investors and mortgage seekers. And all of this is enabled using the unique privacy-preserving capabilities of the Oasis network. We have a vibrant Oasis ecosystem of over 500 node operators participating in our network. Applications built by Fortune 500s and startups, all realizing the vision of a responsible data economy. We have the largest university program of any layer 1. Tooling, DeFi partnerships, and more tools in that space make it easy to ensure that there is liquidity and ease of use. And here are a few quotes that we have from top node operators on our network. Finally, we request you to get involved because this is not something that we can do alone. We would love to get your help. Please join Telegram, follow us on Twitter, become an ambassador, or apply for a grants program so that you can become a developer on our network. Thank you so much for listening.
Hi, Olaf. Thanks a lot for joining us. So first, let me just briefly introduce Olaf. So we have Olaf here, who is the founder and CEO of Polychain Capital. Olaf is the former head of risk at Coinbase, where he was the first employee. And Polychain is one of the world's largest crypto funds that invest in protocols and companies in the blockchain space, advancing the global adoption of cryptocurrencies. Olaf, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, Dawn, thanks for having me.
Great, so let's get started. So Olaf, you have been in the blockchain space for a very long time, essentially one of the earliest people being in the space as well. So now, given what happened in the past, and let's look in the future. So when you think about where blockchain and crypto will be in 5 years, what are the biggest areas of adoption you think we will see?
Yeah, so I have been in this since 2011, and that whole time have spent a lot of time thinking about sort of what's around the corner and what the next exciting kind of use cases will be of this technology. Right now, I'm spending a lot of time definitely thinking about how we can use blockchains to automate not just sort of monetary systems, but also sort of corporate structures. So the ability for humans to coordinate capital and coordinate economic relationships using blockchain-based contracts, I think is very, very powerful. So we're seeing, you know, obviously the kind of bootstrapping of internet-based money with Bitcoin or sort of electronic gold. But I think that there's another thing happening, which is sort of the automation of corporate structures using software. And so this is where, you know, a group of people around the internet, without knowing each other's identities and without agreeing on a specific geography or jurisdiction, can coordinate money and have ownership units that represent sort of a stake in that money, much in the way that corporate shares might represent an ownership in a business. And you can have secondary markets where those ownership units trade and, you know, a group agreed upon use of that capital. And oftentimes these sort of businesses, right, but they're really more like loose internet sovereign organizations, can sort of sponsor or own businesses that are sort of, you know, structured as smart contracts. So a lot of what we're seeing in decentralized finance or DeFi is not just a financial product that's sort of automated with software, but also a sort of human and capital structure that owns and supports that financial product that's also sort of blockchain based and untethered to the world of banking, fiat, and traditional sort of legal entities and geography. And so I do think that, you know, over the next few years, we're going to see many significantly more scalable crypto systems launch. And we're going to see, because of that scalability boost, substantially more complex and interesting sort of corporate and capital structures prop up new types of, you know, blockchain-based products. So I'm excited both for the expansion of sort of blockchain-based applications beyond just finance. Right now, you know, we see a lot of traction with these decentralized financial products, but I think a lot of the reason that we're limited to finance today is the scalability of these low-level systems. And in addition to that, a lot of experimentation around the sort of corporate and capital structure that sort of sponsors these on-chain financial products. So I think that this trend just feels like we are taking corporate structures as well as financial products and making them move at the speed of open source software, instead of making the move at the speed of sort of legacy finance or the speed of, these kind of creation of new types of legal entities is a very slow moving thing. You know, the invention of the C Corp or the limited liability company, there isn't a lot of innovation in that area. And I think that we're going to see over the next 5 years a huge amount of innovation, both in terms of products that can be embedded in blockchains, as well as these sort of on-chain corporate structures that support those products.
That's very interesting. I guess people have been talking about DAOs. So these are things like DAO and potentially further expansions to
Yeah,
this kind
exactly. And I think that DAOs were very theoretical for a long time. And now we have multiple billion-dollar DAOs operating today with real financial products and real users. So I think that the amount of traction that we've seen in DeFi is not just due to the automation of financial products, but also due to the automation of the capital structure behind those financial products. And that's sort of the DAO. And so to me, we're seeing two parallel pieces of innovation happening that are sort of feeding on each other, right? There's a very strong feedback loop whereby, these DeFi products are enabled by smarter DAO structures, and these DAO structures are enabled by DeFi products that have product market fit.
Yeah, that's a great point. Right, thank you. And then, so what needs to happen for the blockchain to get to a point of mass adoption then?
Yeah, so I think we're still in sort of the petri dish of experimentation. Most of these products are built for crypto traders or kind of crypto advocates or fanatics. I think that, we need to see a better abstractions at the user experience layer for these things to go sort of quote mainstream, right? We need to move off the desktop and onto mobile. We need to do away with things like public key hashes that are scary and, copy pasting keys. We also need better sort of institutional infrastructure. So we need the ability for institutional investors to enter this space. I mean, we've only had, proper licensed crypto custodians for 2 years in the blockchain landscape, right? This whole area is still extremely nascent, and we don't really have the appropriate abstractions for regular users, nor do we have the appropriate tooling for more institutional users. So I think that as both of those mature, we can start to bring all of the great stuff that's been built as kind of science experiments and actually bring those to market, right? And that means a lot of times targeting the right geography and the right use case with the right abstractions such that the end user experience is very simple without having to understand all the nuts and bolts underneath it. It's kind of like in the early days of Bitcoin, it was mostly miners, right? You didn't really have this concept of traders or speculators. Nowadays, people that use Bitcoin, the vast, vast majority of them don't understand how mining works, nor should they have to, right? They sort of can be abstracted away from the nuts and bolts of what makes the system secure or usable and just focus on this sort of investment asset that's Bitcoin. And so I think that a lot of the things being built now are super fascinating in a sort of R&D environment. But to take them mainstream, we need to effectively abstract away all of those nuts and bolts and just bring the end value to the user. Because the end user might just be interested in, a loan or a payment or, escrow or something relatively simple a lot of the time. But we don't yet have the right abstractions to make that easy. So I think that that's one of the major catalysts. And that's just the work of entrepreneurs and technologists. I think it's not that different from the early internet, where you needed to use IP addresses and you needed to use the terminal instead of the browser. And you needed to set up your own SMTP server to use email. The internet wasn't always easy. We didn't always have cloud storage. We didn't always have mobile devices. But now the internet is so easy that you literally can give an infant an iPad and they will learn to navigate it. Obviously, with no mental model for how the internet works or understanding any of the sort of underlying technical, infrastructure. And so in this case, I think we're very far from like the iPad with a child's kind of moment for crypto. And those kind of user experience breakthroughs that are the result both of design and technology are, I think, in my mind, the next big catalyst to bring these useful products to the mainstream and actually deliver value to end users.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a great point. Thanks. And to do that, of course, I guess the blockchain itself also needs to have like greater scalability and and some of these other.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, this I think is one of the things that makes me really excited about Oasis is both the kind of scalability that you guys have built in, but the other point that I think is very future looking that you guys have been ahead of the curve on is understanding that for a lot of these structures to truly scale and be used by traditional enterprises and corporates, there really needs to be substantially improved privacy. So all of smart contracts today are sort of transparent, and anyone can see who's interacting with them, and anyone can see how they're being interacted with. And that can be useful for sort of analytics and things like that. But if we're ever going to have, you know, a lot of the point of these systems is that, for example, competing competitors or competing even nation states could interact with these systems, much in the way that competing nation states might agree on the value of money, or corporations in different jurisdictions can agree and do commerce together. So I think that adding sort of a privacy layer to a lot of this functionality is critical, in addition to the scalability that we need longer term. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of use cases that Oasis, I think, is particularly well suited for that I'd love to ask you about, Dawn.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks. Please go ahead. Okay.
Yeah, so I think one for me is where you view privacy as sort of fitting into the long-term sustainability of crypto, or sort of the long-term roadmap of crypto.
Great. Yeah, thanks. You actually just offered very good answers to this question. Right. So today, crypto mainly is used for crypto enthusiasts and early adopters and so on. But as we want to bring blockchain to the mainstream, just as you mentioned, there are these other entities such as institutions or even governments and so on. For confidentiality, privacy, these are key capabilities that they really need, because they need to protect more about their sensitive information, and they can't just put out that sensitive information on the public, like in the clear text and so on. And hence, and also even as individual users as well, individual users also has a lot of sensitive information. So that's why, for example, for healthcare, for these for individual users, financial data and so on, these all are very sensitive, and we need to provide better privacy protection for users' data, even as they essentially utilize like blockchain applications too. So that's why privacy is really important for the long-term sustainability of crypto. And besides that, also one interesting thing that we have noted also is that, right, so on one hand, for example, Ethereum has full transparency. On the other hand, right, so the transparency can be helpful for everybody to see what's happening on chain, but on the other hand, it also gives attackers a lot of opportunities to launch their attacks. That's why we see these front-running attacks, and then there are other attacks where attackers can exploit vulnerabilities and so on. So with a system that can better protect the user's privacy, it can also help reduce or eliminate some of these like front-running type of attacks and so on. So here, I think privacy is one thing about helping users and entities protect their sensitive information, but also overall, it actually can help the system to be to prevent certain types of attacks also, which is also another interesting aspect.
Yep. And I know that one thing you guys have pioneered is some sort of economic models for how people can sort of publish and share data on the blockchain. And I'd be curious to hear, in your words, just a high level understanding of sort of how that works and how you designed kind of a crypto economic mechanism to have secure data sharing.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. So this also relates to why privacy is important. Again, like in this case, privacy is not just actually about protecting user sensitive information. Another really important aspect is secure computing. Privacy preserving computation can help users actually maintain control of their data and maintain control of their rights to data. So what's a really unique capability that the Oasis platform can enable is what we call data tokenization. So the Oasis platform, the scalability is one side that they can achieve greater scalability. And another unique aspect of the Oasis platform is that it's the first platform that uniquely combines secure computing and a blockchain distributed ledger. So what this allows us is for the first time to actually help establish a new type of assets that we call data assets. So what happens is the blockchain, the distributed ledger, can help provide immutable logs of users' rights to data and their policies of how they want their data to be utilized. And then coupled with secure computing, the secure computing can then enable the data to be utilized in a privacy-preserving way. So for example, the computation can run in a secure execution environments so that the consumer of the data can only use the data within the secure execution environments. It won't get a raw copy of the data outside of the secure execution environment, for example. So that the data can be protected even when it's being used, when it's being computed over. And the data consumer, for example, can now just try to reuse the data without getting permission again. So what this means is that this combination of data and data use policy forms what we call a capsule that essentially enables this new type of asset that we call data assets. So this data asset enables users to maintain control of their rights to data and also at the same time to enable data to be utilized in this privacy-preserving way, so that even when the data is being consumed by a third party, the user doesn't lose control of the data. So for example, in contrast, in today's setting, if a user wants a third party to utilize their data, the user has to give a copy of their data to the third party. And then once the third party has a copy of the user's data, the user essentially loses control of their data, because then the third party can go take the user's data, do whatever they want with the data, even though they may be bound by contract, but there's no way for the user to actually check and enforce that that contract is actually followed. And hence, what the Oasis platform enables is a completely different way of utilizing data, a secure way of utilizing data, so that the users can still maintain control of their data, even when the data is being utilized by a third party. And with this way, this enables this data asset so that users can actually gain greater benefit from their data. Because if users cannot maintain control of their data, then their data essentially becomes useless, because the third party can now take users' data and make money out of the users' data, and the users will not be able to do anything about it. But now, with this establishment of data assets, users still maintain control of the data, so that when third party utilizes the data, the user can gain more fair compensation from that, can gain greater value out of it, and the third party will now be able to take a copy of the user's data and just go do arbitrary things with users' data. So with this, so we have a number of use cases. So one is, so for example, today in DeFi, everybody talks about yield farming, talks about liquidity, staking, and so on. But with the data, actually, we can, it's interesting, so with the data asset, we can do something similar. In Spirit, in the sense that users can actually stake their data, do data staking, stake their data in a pool that we call a data trust. And as data consumer utilize data in this data trust, they may pay payments into the trust, and users can gain data yield from this trust. And one interesting thing is that for liquidity staking, especially today, given the Ethereum gas fee is so high, so only the larger token holders or the richer ones can actually, in some sense, afford doing this liquidity mining and so on, and also, of course, they can gain more benefits from that as well. But with the data staking, everybody has their data, and each person's data, even though a person may not have a lot of money, but maybe the person, is someone who actually has a rare medical situation and so on, and then that person's data actually can be super valuable. And hence, I think this is also a more democratized way for everybody to actually be able to utilize their data assets in a fair way, and doesn't really matter how much money you actually have. And hence, I think this can really be very, very meaningful for a greater population.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, it can lead to data markets, that are sort of on the blockchain and therefore, global and somewhat trustless and everything. And I was talking about this concept of these sort of on-chain DAOs or corporate structures, right? And I feel like there's an opportunity for these data assets to be used as sort of the core asset base of those DAO-like structures, where you could have different people contribute data into the DAO and then be paid based on sort of how it's all consumed. Because a lot of times, to build a big, robust data set, you might need data from lots of different places.
Exactly.
It's really interesting because, as I was talking about earlier, some of these sort of on-chain DAO-like structures are sponsoring financial products. But in this case, they could sponsor basically APIs to consume data. And the entire sort of, again, quote, business model, I use that term loosely, could be, owned and operated by a set of token holders with these kind of data assets being the product on Oasis. So that's
right. Yes, absolutely. And that's also right. Like we call it a data trust, or this data DAO. I think it's super exciting, and also it helps solve another important issue that we see today. Like a lot of valuable data today sits in data silos. It's very difficult, for example, for medical researchers and so on to gain access to data to do the kind of medical research that they need to do to help find better cures for diseases and so on. So I'm really excited that this type of data trust or data DAO in the future can provide a much better way for users globally to pull data together and to enable better societal benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's pretty impressive the amount of sort of pilots you all have managed to get involved between sort of corporates and the Oasis technology stack. I feel like this data sharing across corporates, the reality is getting them involved in this kind of technology is going to take some hand-holding. And I think you guys have done a great job of sort of getting those folks involved in the Oasis ecosystem and sort of educating them on how Oasis works and what it enables.
Right, yeah, thanks. Right. Yeah, exactly. Right, I'm also happy to just briefly share some of the example use cases in here. Exactly like you said, actually, we actually have use cases in both of these two settings that you just mentioned. One is for individual users. We recently, a partner just did a beta launch on our platform in the genomic setting. And so Nebula Genomics, so they actually did a beta launch of their products on the Oasis platform. And this is the first time to enable users to become owners of their genomic data. As we all know, genomic data is some of the most sensitive information for individual, especially given that you actually won't be able to change your genes.
Mm-hmm.
And with the Oasis platform's capability, in this case, we can enable users to maintain control of their genomic data, and they can decide how they want their data to be utilized. For example, they can give consent to a third party, like a genomic company, to enable them to do genomic analysis on their data and to provide users the results. And then in this case, the genomic company can run their analysis in the secure execution environment provided by the Oasis platform. And then in this case, they don't get a raw copy of the user's data, so users can maintain control of their data while still benefit from the analysis. So that's the individual user's case. And also, as you can see, as more users join this platform, then the platform can actually build up a big data trust of users' genomic data as well. So users can do data staking of their genomic data into this data trust, and for societal benefits for medical researchers who want to use the genomic data to do different research, then this actually can really be, I think, really be a game changer that can really enable a completely new way for medical researchers to gain access to this data while at the same time still protect individuals' data privacy for their genomic data.
Yeah, and that's just a fascinating use case, because I think it's sort of conceptually similar to some of the functionality you can get using homomorphic encryption, where you basically have a data set whereby some other party can do machine learning on that data set without ever actually seeing the plain text data.
Right.
And to me, it's just fascinating because you have the ability for consumers or corporates to share data to basically a network of analysts who can draw conclusions about that data, but without ever actually seeing the data. And so it's kind of counterintuitive. It's kind of the magic of cryptography that that's possible. But I do think there's going to be lots of use cases in those marketplaces for sort of encrypted data and intelligence, so to speak.
Right. Yes, it's really exciting. I'm really excited about the future in that direction. And also going back to your the other usage scenario that you mentioned among corporations. So for example, oftentimes corporations may also need to collaborate together to share data for a certain computation that they may want to do together. But at the same time, the data is very sensitive and different entities may not trust each other. So in this case, we are also really excited that we have a great use case that is actually being developed on the Oasis platform. And this is in collaboration with the Binance that we have announced the partnership earlier. Together, we have launched this CryptoSafe Alliance to bring together different crypto exchanges and other entities in the ecosystem, so that the different entities can actually collaborate together to fight crypto frauds by sharing threat intelligence data. But then, of course, as we know that this data is really sensitive, and also the different entities may not trust each other, and hence the Oasis platform really is uniquely well suited to enable such use cases, to enable such sensitive information being utilized in a collaborative computing setting, and still protects the confidentiality of the data, even when the different parties may not trust each other.
Yeah, so I think over this conversation, we've talked a lot about sort of future use cases and what's around the corner with blockchains, as well as what Oasis sort of uniquely enables and what some of those early use cases might be for the Oasis platform. Dawn, is there anything else you want to sort of communicate to everyone ahead of the Oasis Network launch?
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think also we talked a little bit about the DeFi side. I think besides this new paradigm of data tokenization that we discussed, also even just to help today's DeFi, I think adding the privacy protection, enabling private DeFi with the Oasis platform. Also, there are lots of really exciting work that's in the pipeline, and also in combination with the scalability and the privacy protection, we can help DeFi to really reach the next level as well. So overall, I think Oasis platform really is the unique platform that provides greater scalability and strong privacy protection. And we are really excited to see the different use cases, in particular new use cases that the platform can provide, and really excited to see the community's strong support on building on the platform as well. Like really excited to be.
And I wonder if we'll see any new DeFi primitives emerge on Oasis where people use data assets as collateral for financial products. When you get sort of this remixing of DeFi with these data assets, I think we might find some very interesting behavior.
Right, that's a great point. So one immediate application that we have been exploring also is that, right, exactly when you have these data assets, so one, it can actually help establish better the credit score or risk score for a user as a borrower. So this actually could help enable applications such as under-collateralized lending. This can actually help bring DeFi, for example, lending and borrowing to the more general population.
Yeah, 'cause I suppose you could sort of privately like prove that you had a high credit score without revealing your identity. Tie that to a key and then receive a loan based on that.
Right.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Right, right, exactly, right. And we have there's some interesting use cases that's being developed on the Oasis platform in mortgage lending as well, how utilizing user-sensitive information to help users to then get better mortgage rates and so on. So there are third-party developers who are building this type of use cases on Oasis platform as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's very exciting, Dawn. I know we're excited to be stakers in the network launch and actually participate in block production in Oasis. And we'll be tracking the ecosystem development very closely to see both how the sort of grassroots hacker community as well as enterprises take advantage of the private data sharing and private DeFi that Oasis enables.
Great, great. Thank you so much for joining again. It was great talking together.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn, for having me.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. All right, thanks. Hasib, thank you so much for joining us. So Hasib is a managing partner at Dragonfly Capital. And before joining Dragonfly Capital, Hasib was also a partner at MetaStable Capital. And Hasib, thank you so much for joining us here.
Thanks for having me, Dawn. I'm excited to be here.
Right. So yeah, let's just get started. You have been really active in the blockchain domain, and I think you have really a lot of really interesting thoughts about DeFi. So maybe first you can start sharing with the audience here about your take on DeFi. Of course, there's a lot of discussion whether DeFi is a hype, whether the hype is sustainable, and so on. It'll be great to hear your thoughts.
So that's a very broad question to start with. Is DeFi sustainable? So I'd say that if you're paying close attention to DeFi right now, you see that there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of crazy valuations, there's a lot of speculation happening in this market. Now, to be clear, this happens every year or so in crypto. Every 2 years, there's some kind of crazy speculative cycle. And by that standard, the DeFi speculation has been relatively muted. If you count up all the market cap from DeFi, it's still less than 5%, or somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5% of the total crypto market cap. So in absolute terms, it's not huge relative to what's going on in crypto. That said, it's clear that there's a lot of frothiness going on in DeFi. So the question is, is what's happening in DeFi, is this real fundamentals? Is there something actually important happening here? Or is this a flash in the pan, speculative, sort of recursive enterprise? And what I'd argue is that
much utility we are really seeing and so on. Right?
Yeah. What I would argue is that DeFi is kind of always what crypto has been about. And let me flesh out what I mean by that. So, if you sort of trace back the history of where crypto came from, right? Of course, it started with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin really is digital. It was the first instantiation of digital money. And the very first thing that people wanted after they had Bitcoin was they wanted to expand Bitcoin by adding more opcodes, right? Because the Bitcoin script is very limited. And so you had things like Blackcoin and Feathercoin and Counterparty and all these different very, very tiny additions to make Bitcoin more expressive. And all of those ideas really culminated in Ethereum. And Ethereum sort of became this generalization that, okay, once you have money, I don't just want to send money back and forth. That's cool, that's fine. But really, I want to have arbitrary agreements about that money. I want to have contracts, right? And so we went from Bitcoin sort of being the base numeraire that got reinvented to getting contracts. And once you have contracts, what's the next thing that you want to do? Almost immediately after, the next thing they wanted to do was fundraising, which was ICOs, right? So that's capital formation on the blockchain. So we went from money to contracts to capital formation. And then what I think we now call DeFi is basically just the generalization of all the other things that people want to do once you have those primitives, right? Once you have capital formation, you might want to do lending, and you might want to do trading, you might want to do derivatives, you might want to do synthetic assets, and all of this universe of financial applications that can be invented using these core primitives. It all started with what people originally wanted to do, which was to make money, right? Once you create money, you create contracts, you create all the other things that contracts enable. That thread of innovation is the same thread that started with Bitcoin. So I think DeFi is really important. I think it's what this whole thing has been about from the very beginning, which is disrupting financial technology and making it open, making it permissionless, making it free for anybody to use and to innovate on. So I think that's important. Should this token or that token be worth $1 billion? I don't know. But I think that the core primitive of DeFi is really important and it's here to stay.
Great. Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts. I totally agree. I think really, if you look at blockchain, so first of all, what blockchain is good for. So first of all, it really is about you building native assets on the blockchain. And then once you have these native assets, then it's about what these native assets can do. And so very naturally, I think, right, that's why finance is essentially, I would say, the first application domain. And that's really natural and native to blockchain, is because you can do a lot just with the native assets on the blockchain already. Whereas in the future, we hope to bring more assets onto the blockchain, from the real world. But that will take much longer than the native assets.
That's right. Totally completely agree.
Okay. And then what do you think that's missing in DeFi currently?
Oh, so much. I mean, you just mentioned, real world assets. That's one big thing that's missing. The only real world asset today in DeFi is the US dollar. And there's a lot of it, that's one of the most, the most traded asset in crypto and in DeFi is the US dollar. But there's still a dearth of currencies, a dearth of, things like bonds or equities or other assets and commodities that people would naturally want to trade. I think some of the things that are really missing from DeFi are things like uncollateralized lending. So right now we have over-collateralized lending, but of course, the large swath of especially consumer lending is uncollateralized or under-collateralized. And there's no real story for that right now in DeFi because there's no identity. And without identity, you really can't get, uncollateralization or really credit, which is another term for the same thing. Beyond that, there are a lot of pieces that are missing of, for example, like anything that requires a central limit order book in DeFi doesn't really work today. Sure, there are a few applications, a few exchanges that are doing some volume, but the reality is that Ethereum's throughput is so constrained and so limited that it makes central limit order books very infeasible. They're just too expensive to operate on a very low throughput blockchain, which is one of the reasons why we really need next generation blockchains like Oasis that can support much higher throughput to support these kind of more conventional financial primitives in a way. I think many people have heard of Uniswap or AMMs or automated market makers. In a way, they're really clever adaptations to the incredibly constrained environment that is Ethereum 1.0. It's a way to make sort of things that emulate order books work inside a very kind of sort of low compute environment. But once you unlock the ability to use much more compute than Ethereum offers, you can just create much more efficient primitives for buying, selling, trading, creating things than you can today in Ethereum.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Yes, so I completely agree. And that's also why, like you mentioned, at Oasis, we are building this new platform to really achieve greater scalability and adding privacy protection, and that even actually can help with this under-collateralized lending to help achieve these new capabilities and push DeFi to the next level.
Right. So I had some questions for you actually that
that's great.
Be very interesting for the audience to hear. So I'm an investor in Oasis, and I actually invested in you guys multiple times from when I was at Metastable into again at Dragonfly. So you guys can't get away from me. Yeah. I'm incredibly excited. You guys are now in your mainnet beta, and there's it's been such a long journey to get to here. Of what kind of applications would be enabled by the Oasis blockchain that couldn't exist, for example, on Ethereum?
Yes, that's a great question. So with Oasis, platforms. One, as we mentioned, with this paradigm architecture, we can enable much greater scalability. And another important advantage of the Oasis platform is that it is the first blockchain platform that combines secure computing and this distributed ledger to provide privacy protection in the blockchain platform. And the combination of scalability and this privacy protection by combining secure computing and the distributed ledger enables new use cases and new paradigms that couldn't be done before in previous platforms. So let me just give you one example. So one application domain that we're really excited about is this new paradigm that we call data tokenization. So people talk a lot in blockchain about tokenization, and in general they tokenize, for example, the traditional financial assets and so on. But as we know, that data is the key driver of modern economy, and there's a huge value in data. And there has been estimates that if we look at data economy comparing to the traditional just finance, the size of data economy is orders of magnitudes bigger than what's just considered as traditional finance. And I think even going beyond DeFi, the next really exciting and huge domain that we really want to enable and tackle is this data economy. So our platform is uniquely well suited to enable this data tokenization and also leading to what we call a responsible data economy. So let me just talk a little bit what the data tokenization means, right? So basically, so today it's very hard for users to maintain control to their data and rights to data. Basically, there's not even a clear notion of users' rights to data. Whereas in our platform, by combining secure computing and the distributed ledger, we can enable this new concept of data tokenization. So first of all, the distributed ledger enables users to provide an immutable log to users' rights to data, and also the policies of how they want their data to be utilized. And also it can provide an immutable log to even for how the user's data has been used. And by combining with the secure computing, so secure computing enables data to be utilized in a way that essentially even as the data is being computed on, the data privacy is being protected. So for example, the data consumer will only be able to compute over the data in the secure execution environments, and will now be able to get a copy of the raw data outside of the secure execution environments. So this way we can enable data to be used, but at the same time still enable users' rights to data is being maintained. Users can still maintain control of their data. And what does this mean? So if users cannot maintain control of their data, for example, every time if somebody computes over that data, that data consumer just gets a copy of user's data, then user basically loses control of their data, because now the data consumer has a copy of the data. They can then go ahead and do whatever they want to with their data, because user can no longer control the data. And hence that also significantly limits the value that users can extract from their data, because once the data is used once, then the consumer can then just take the data and do whatever they want. Then users, of course, it's difficult for users to maintain value from on that data. But in our case, our platform enables users to protect, to maintain control of their data and rights to their data, and hence this is the necessary components and ingredients for users to be able to extract some more value out of their data. Because now, when that data consumer, another data consumer that needs to use the data, they still need to get the consent, the permission from the user, and the user can ask for value in return. And the value, of course, can come in different forms as well. So I think this is a huge new enabler to enable a very different data economy than today. in today's data economy, users really don't, again, they don't have control over their data. In some sense, they have very little power. Whereas in this new paradigm, what the Oasis platform can enable is actually retaining the power to the user. So now the user has the power and hence be able to gain more value out of their data. And I think this will actually also lead to better usage of data as well. Then now users potentially can help better solve the data silo problems, make it easier for data to be utilized for societal benefits, and also to provide better protection for users' data privacy and provide them with a better, fair value and so on as well.
So that's a very convincing story of the value of data tokenization. I want to ask you to paint a picture for me. Let's say it's 5 years in the future. Oasis has taken over the world. What is my experience going to be like in a world where data is tokenized and I can retain my rights to it as a user? What is it going to be like for me to interact with Facebook or with Google or with this service or my financial institution? Paint a picture for me.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, let me give you a concrete example of something that we actually offer today already. So in partnership with the genomic company, Nebula Genomics, we actually just launched a beta product service to help users maintain control for their genomic data. So with this new product service, actually this will be the first time where users become owners of their genomic data, and at the same time to enable their genomic data to be utilized in a privacy-preserving way. So people may be familiar with companies like 23andMe, which provides genomic data analysis to users. But in these cases, oftentimes, even these companies themselves cites slow down in consumer adoption, given the consumers' privacy concerns of how their genomic data may be used and so on. So with the Oasis platform, again in partnership with the genomic company here, we can so users will maintain control of their genomic data. Their genomic data is stored in encrypted form. And users can specify how they want the data to be utilized. For example, they can say that they want to give consent to this genomic company to do genomic analysis over their data. Then in this case, so users' rights to their genomic data and also their policies of how the genomic data can be utilized is logged on the Oasis platform, the blockchain platform. And then also once, for example, the genomic company gets consent from users to run genomic analysis on users' data, then in this case, Nebula can actually run their genomic analysis within the secure execution environments provided by the Oasis platform, and they won't be able to do anything else. So, for example, they can only compute over users' data within the secure execution environments, and they can't do anything else with the users' data. So this way, and also every time when they use users' data, the usage will also be logged on the Oasis platform, and the users can go audit themselves as well. So this is an example where users maintain control of their genomic data, and they can still benefit from their genomic data to get the results from the genomic analysis and so on. And also then, for example, if a pharmaceutical company wants to get users' genomic data to do research, then users can also see whether they want to consent and agree to that, and then they can have a certain rewards in compensation and so on, or they want to just have their data, donate their data for general medical research, but in a way that's done pure with guarantee of their privacy protection, and now have the data utilized for other things, for example. So now you can envision this will actually enable a completely new way, a new paradigm, how users can take ownership and control of their genomic data. And that's just one example. And of course, there's medical data that goes beyond genomic data. And another domain that we're really excited about is financial data. So for example, we actually have interfaces with the financial services APIs like Plaid and so on. So today, actually, most users are not aware that through this kind of APIs, actually, a lot of companies are getting users' financial data, for example. In certain cases, maybe anonymized under the umbrella of anonymization and so on, which can still be re-identified. And users are really losing control of their financial data, how it's being utilized, and oftentimes users may not even be aware of it. And so we hope that with this type of technology, it can also enable these other segments in financing, IoT, in many other domains. Essentially, again, users can maintain stronger control of their data. And then, so now when someone wants to, of course, for example, users' financial data can be really valuable. It also can contain users' purchase history and so on. Like a lot of companies may want to provide, ads or whatever, like other services to users based on this. But now, given that users actually have control of the data, they can decide how the data can be utilized, who can utilize the data, and so on. So I think a lot of the issues that users are seeing today can, we actually, for the first time, can have opportunity to provide very different solutions and can really change the power dynamics.
So in short, the social contract between users and companies will go from don't be evil to can't be evil.
Exactly. That's a really good, that's a really good way to putting it.
Fair enough. We were just talking about DeFi, and I would love to hear from your end how Oasis enables new DeFi applications with Oasis's architecture.
Great, thanks. So with Oasis' greater scalability and privacy protection, it can really help bring DeFi to the next level. So one, we can enable much more scalable DeFi. As I mentioned earlier, the Oasis platform, we also support Paradigm that's fully backwards compatible to Ethereum EVM. And so it's really easy to run, for example, the current Ethereum DeFi applications on the Oasis platform. So for example, again, through with our community members, for example, Second State, we actually, so the Uniswap actually runs on Oasis. So there is an Oasis version of Uniswap. Essentially, the code is the same, basically. And instead of running on Ethereum, it just runs on the Oasis platform. And people can actually go try it out today. And there actually very soon will be some competitions and hackathons that will be launched to have users try it out. And in this case, we can provide much greater scalability for Uniswap and for this kind of DeFi applications, and a much more improved user experience and cheaper costs and so on. So that's the scalability side. And also with the privacy protection, we can really enable what we call private DeFi. With private DeFi, we can enable, for example, instead of just relying on over-collateralized lending, we can actually enable under-collateralized lending. So by utilizing users' data in a privacy-preserving way, the application can then actually compute, for example, risk scores, credit scores for the borrower, and then these scores can be used by the lending services to decide how to do the lending, and hence enable a much greater market for lending with this under-collateralized lending. And also with the privacy protection, we can provide essentially provide better protection for sensitive information in the various DeFi applications. So for example, in the traditional finance, it's unimaginable that a lot of these financial details will be in public, right? Because a lot of it is proprietary information. For for traditional financial institutions and so on, it's really sensitive information that they would not want to reveal in public, in a fully public ledger and so on. So with the privacy protection for the Oasis platform, it can really help protect sensitive information like this. And also here, the privacy protection is not also just to protect this type of sensitive information. It also can help reduce attacks. For example, right now on Ethereum in DeFi, because everything's public, attackers can do front-running attacks. They can do a lot of these attacks because they can see all the transactions. They can see what users want to do, and then they can run ahead of users and so on, and also other types of attacks. And as we enable private DeFi, we can actually help eliminate, mitigate many of these type of attacks also. And hence, we are really excited that with the greater scalability and privacy protection, the Oasis platform can really help bring DeFi to the next level and to more mainstream.
Hi everyone, this is Luca from Oasis. Oasis is a layer 1 blockchain that brings privacy and scalability to the blockchain industry. And today is really my big pleasure to be here with Liam from Staffy, one of our DeFi partners. Staffy is the first DeFi protocol unlocking liquidity of staked assets. And we're going to hear from Liam directly what this means and what are the interesting use cases about Staffy itself and the partnership that we as a company have with them. So Liam, I'll hand it over to you. Do you want to just give us a little bit introduction of yourself and tell us a bit more about what Staffy is and going a little bit behind what's hidden on your website, let's say?
Yeah. So hello everyone, I'm Liam. I'm the co-founder of Staffy. So I work as a product manager in the internet giant company. So I drove into the crypto from 2018. So we invented Staffy. So Staffy is the first DeFi protocol unlocking liquid of staked assets. User can stake POS token through Staffy and receive our token in return, and which are available for trading while still earning staking reward. Staking assets are the type of deposit assets, which are kind of big share of the markets. We know validating, and our team have been validating in different POS chain since the early of 2018, and we found a big problem between the token liquidity and mainnet security. Most of the POS chain and set up incentive mechanism to reward the holder who is staking, and higher staking rates bring a better security but lower its liquidity. So Staffy issue a staking derivative to the stakers when stakers staking through Staffy staking contract. So Staffy staking contract will record and maintain the relation between the derivative holder and stake assets. Staking derivative can be tradable, but staking assets are not. They are locked in the original POS chain, and the ownership of staking asset will be changed when the staking derivative is changed. So that's the key Staffy does.
Thank you. Yeah, you said a lot about what Staffy is. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on what the reward token is and what does it enable? And I think you referred to that as the ART token, right?
Yeah, it's ART token. So ART token is the version of Staffy staking derivative. You include many types like RETH, RDots, RROS, maybe in the future. So XTZ and also RFIS, etc. So ART token just short for reward token. And when users stake POS token through Staffy, they will receive an equal amount of token in return. It's a dynamic amount in return. So for example, you arrows represent the state rows of Oasis, while the R rows, while XDZ represents the XDZ. So our token allow user to receive staking reward and accept liquidity at any given time by trading our token instead. So user also have the right to redeem the corresponding amount of stake token at any given time. So yes, so we divide our token standing into four categories, including substrate-based R token, Cosmos SDK R token, Ethereum R token, and others. So others include many POS chain like the Oasis and Tezos, Algorand, and Harmony, and etc. So due to the difference of POS projects, there are many details cannot be copy-paste to the others. But we are trying to unite our solution into one. Like staking contract is an open ledger, and it maintains the relation between the R token and state assets, as long as stakers stake token through staking contract built in Staffy, so they get R token in return. So we will deploy many or several staking contract to fulfill our function. Staking contracts built in Staffy chain and connect to original chain on staker behalf. It is more like a ledger for stakers, which maintain and update the relationship between them. In the original process of staking, staker delegate their token to the validator by broadcasting it to the consensus. After the tax is finalizing, staker have complete their delegation. While in the staking contract, staking contract will execute the staking process on staker behalf and issue the R token to the holder instead. And we have 6 features for the R tokens we describe in the website. So for the details and people who are have the interest and can walk through the details in the website. So yeah, that's elaboration of our tokens.
Thank you. That's really good. Where are you in terms of adoption, and where is the market in terms of adoption when it comes to the idea of liquid staking? This is definitely something that solves a real problem, which is the trade-off between liquidity and security, as you said before. How's the market reacting to that, given that it's very early stage, and I'm very proud of this partnership exactly because of this reason?
Yes. So actually, like I mentioned before, our tokens are tradable at any given time as long as you have a liquidity market for it. So staking contract play a role like a gatekeeper. The redemption can only execute by the R token holder. So no matter how R token is exchanged, and then the final R token holder hold the rights of a redemption. That's how liquid staking works. So with R token, you don't need to wait for the unstake period, which may last several days. So it can be used to hedge against the market volatility. So when the new staking reward is generated, the Staffy protocol will periodically update the swap rates of our token exchange for the original token. So which is the reference to the price of our token because the swap rates of all R token are consistent. It is possible to form a stable liquidity market. So Ethereum just launched their deposit contract several days ago. So it raised a hot topic on the staking derivative of ETH2. So there are many solutions on it. So I think there's 2 demand: one the staking derivative and when the deposit contract is when the ETH2 phase 0 is launched. So yeah, so I think we can discuss about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of my next questions exactly around this idea of using the art tokens to hedge against market volatility while still earning rewards, right? So what is the main problem here that this that you just described, and feel free to go deeper if there's anything more you want to add, but what is the main problem that this solves, and at what point, what kind of use case is supported or enabled by hedging volatility, hedging against market volatility and earning rewards at the same time?
Yes. So if you stake your token in the original chain, the original process will lock your token by providing security for the consensus, right? So there are many kinds of a period that have been adopted by different consensus. So Ethereum will last for there's uncertainty for the locking period in Ethereum 2, but there's a certainty period in the other peers consensus that have existed in the markets, just like Polkadot will lock the stake dodge for 28 days, and also Stackfield will lock the fees, the stake fees for 40 days, and the Oasis will lock the stake rolls for several days as well. So if you want to react to the market, so you have to hold your assets in the pocket, right? So if the access is locked in the consensus, you receive the staking reward, but you can react to the markets immediately. So if you hold the R token instead, so we build the markets for the R token. We just like launching some trading pair like R token to the original token in the DEX or in the centralized exchange, so people can sell the R token in the second markets instead of the sell the locking assets. So it can hedge. I can use to hedge against market volatility. That's what I thought.
Very good, very good. And so one of the things we do a lot at Oasis is thinking of where DeFi is going, and we try to see how the different building blocks that we provide, mainly privacy and scalability, can actually help the evolution of DeFi, and it can help correct some of the elements that over time result into some aspects that end up keeping a lot of people away from DeFi. How is the idea of stuff in general and the art tokens, of course, meant to solve the problems of DeFi, or even more importantly, how it's going to push DeFi forward?
Yeah, so if our token can be successfully integrated into DeFi, we think it is a good significant to the entire DeFi, because we think one of the problems with DeFi now is lack of assets. We all know that most of the current DeFi is built on Ethereum. So we know maybe in the future, so it's going to be built in Oasis as well. So all the access available for DeFi for now, for the current stage, are only the ERC20 tokens, right? But many assets with a market value in the top 20 are not the ERC20. So which made many assets unavailable in DeFi. So most of the projects that adopt the PLC consensus are building their own DeFi ecologies, just like the Oasis, but they are not, I think it's not the time, they're not taking shape, they're not forming a lot of asset islands in order to maintain security. POS consensus generally encourage or incentivize users to provide security to the consensus through staking. Many assets will be locked in the consensus, resulting in fewer available access in the POS consensus. So our token can solve this access problem very well, and through the generate agreement, different assets can be brought into the DeFi, and this will enrich the entire DeFi asset type to some extent. And the point is that our token have the right of the staking reward, that the whole rights make our token different from the existing assets. So we believe that many new products will emerge based on such interest-bearing assets in the future. So I think the art token is totally different from the existing assets. So it is with interest-bearing. So yeah, that will be very interesting, and there will have many interesting protocol will be built based on these assets. We think.
Cool, thank you. What about the role of privacy in all of these, and a particular one, a reference of how you see privacy in general in DeFi, of course, the context of DeFi, and how you see privacy with the art tokens and with what Staff is providing.
In fact, I'm still looking for the application direction, looking for the direction of privacy and the staking derivative. I have invested in many research. I do not have a clear application scenario, but my feeling is that having privacy and DeFi will be a direction in the future. Especially after more access entering DeFi, privacy will be an important part to support the development of DeFi. So if we look at the application of privacy in the original token, just like ERC20 token that are used in the DeFi, we may find some clues. And Oasis is, I think Oasis is an explorer in this direction. I think you may have a better idea on the privacy. So, and I think I have the same question for the Oasis side. So, do you have any suggestion, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course. When we talk about privacy, it's worth noticing that privacy means different things in different contexts, and clearly this also leads to different answers to your question. And I think the way we see it at Oasis is that at its core, bringing privacy to the blockchain can solve some of the limitations that some other networks or like the current state of DeFi is presenting. So privacy is not only important to ensure confidentiality of maybe like commercial interests or participation of larger institutions or individuals or traders or professionals into certain systems, but it also the absence of privacy is also resulting in different consequences that were not maybe clear like a year ago. One of these being like, even if you think about it, even front running ends up resulting in higher fees, which ends up resulting in the ability of fewer people to join the DeFi space, right? Because it has to be even more convenient. And from there, the actual need of creating these very high incentives that, I mean, maybe are sustainable or maybe not. Like we need to discover that with time. But the point I'm making here is that the absence of privacy in blockchain and in DeFi is causing problems that were not clear maybe like in the past. So here we have two ways of seeing privacy. The number one is, and the most immediate one is, in the short term, privacy can be used as a way to encourage participation and prevent some of the problems like high fees and lack of protection of trades. And in the longer term, there are a lot of applications that can be enabled because of privacy. And one of the ones that we invest the most energy on is the idea of creating reputation. How do you create reputation, right? This is the problem. The thing is, with what Oasis enables, there is this concept of like data capsules, right? Which is this place where all the information goes, and this information is in the end managed by the user. And what this means is that if the right set of incentives are figured out and the user can really benefit from this technology, what happens is that companies and users can actually collaborate on the data because the user will be the one retaining this information, and the actual company can do selective queries on, for instance, the financial position of a certain user, get a certain model, get a certain result back, and then based on that, assessing a different like risk modeling, or maybe like an interest rate, or whatever is needed. And the reason why this is important is because the second you can build reputation, which is different from just identity, is reputation, right? Which means identity plus essentially completeness of information. Companies can go to the point of enabling more under-collateralized loans, which significantly expands the market way beyond where it is today. So I'll pause it here. And you and I have been talking about the idea of data tokens and the idea of using the art tokens also in the context of data, and making that more liquid, and also like generating some financial return out of these data tokens. And I remember you being very excited about that. So I'm curious to know more from you about it, and from the idea that like the synergy between Oasis and Staffy is not just on the DeFi side, which is very important, but also on the what comes next, like the open data part and the data token part that Oasis strongly encourages. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so data tokenization have always been the right direction, and the large amount of data and the larger value of data are both an important direction for tokenization. So our team have thoughts and about doing application this direction before, but we like the corresponding data support. So later we discover that Oasis team is working hard in this direction, and doing well. So we're very, very excited. So there are many sources of data, and there are many sources of data generation. And if the data can be processed well at the Oasis level, then Staffy will be able to further subdivide the tokenized data. For example, we provide a personal medical data derivative based on the individual data. I think it will be very interesting to connect to the entire staking derivative to the trading markets and DeFi markets. So, like I imagine, our Oasis provide assistance in terms of privacy. Staffy build scenario for the data derivative. The two parties can cooperate to sustain the data, so as to achieve more benefit when the data is protected. So I think that's the key direction of the cooperation between Staffy and Oasis. So we have many talks on the data derivative in the Shanghai blockchain wave with Dongsong, and we have many inspiration, and we have many talks about that. So our team, Staffy team, really want to dive into the details of the data tokenization on the Oasis side. So, and looking for a further or deeper collaboration with the future data staking derivative. So also I want to know I also want to ask for questions from our side. So yes. So what do you think? The R token. What do you think the data derivative and the staking? So like example, people stake, people upload their data into Oasis and authorize their data to third parties with in some ways, what do you think? How to cooperate with the operation of staking? So what do you think the staking will play a role in this data tokenization process?
So one of the key elements that we are designing for is this idea that if the data is put into these capsules that are used and controlled by the users, we think that the data can be a factor of production, right? And a new idea of the data can be created, which is this idea that you can take a piece of data and you can put it in a place where you can lend it to companies, to a marketplace, and you can earn something in exchange, right? So in order for this to be true, some things need to happen. The first one being there has to be something that can be exchanged in a programmatic way, which means that you and I don't have to jump on a call and negotiate what is my data set, what kind of information is in there, how big is the data set, the quality of my data, and establish some SLA around my data sets, right? That process has to be like automatic. So your system and the protocol needs to know all this information without having to negotiate that each time. So when I put $1, it doesn't matter if it's like a USDC or a DAI or whatever that is. The point is you're exchanging one quantity that has one number, and which is one, and the other item is the definition of what you're trading, which is like the dollar in this case. And that should be the same for the data, right? You can say in the current data set, in the current model, like a data set is defined by some level of confidentiality that I attach subjectively to that. So what's confidential for me may not be confidential for you. So it's not a property of the data, but it's something on top. And then at the same time, there has to be like some way of interpreting that, right? Like a protocol that is able to understand that automatically. If this is possible, and that's the idea behind the data token, then you and I can exchange this information via protocol, and I don't have to deal with you anymore because I just put my data there and someone will take it on the other side. And what's also cool is that the data is ubiquitous, so I can lend it to you and I can lend it to another person, all at the same time. And privacy ensures that that data can be that data token is not really transferred somewhere else, but like stays within the protocol. You can use it for your computation, but then you don't really see what's inside. So I still retain ownership of that. And we are particularly interested in your use case. That's why we got together in First Principle, because essentially what happens is that via Staffy, that data can be transformed into something that can be traded somewhere else at the same time. So there is additional value that can be extracted from that same piece of data. And if I'm a huge believer that blockchain of course is bringing like protocol level incentives, but I'm a huge believer that bringing incentives at the application layer as well have the power to have the power to teach people that data is much more valuable than what they think, and creates the right level of incentives that go beyond fairness, that go beyond the idea of like, hey, listen, like data should be yours, but create a strong financial incentive for actually having people ask for their data because they can generate something. So this goes well beyond just saying, give me the data, I'll give you $5, or I'll give you $1, or I'll give you 20% discount. It goes well beyond that. I'm talking about creating a system where this data is actually recognized as a meaningful value that can be derived in the moment, right? In that specific moment without having to go for negotiation. Yeah, so that hopefully answers your question.
Yeah, so there's more questions because we dive into building a DEX to integrate our token to the existing DEX. So do you think the data derivative can be integrated into the existing DEX? Because there's a standards for the data derivative. There's many there's many types of data. There's many generation source of the data. So we may face a standard problem, right? So there's many types of data and data derivative. So if we issue a derivative for the data provider, so do you think the existing DEX can integrate the data derivative in the future, or we build a new DEX for the data derivative market?
Yeah, clearly I don't, right now I don't have an answer set in stone, but I think what we're leaning towards is that we won't necessarily be able to use existing DEXs because the amount of information that a DEX will have to read from a data token in order to serve that data token on the other side is possibly more complicated than just saying, oh, it has to be like $1 or like a pair USDC with like BTC or something like that. It has to be a little bit more complicated than that. On one side, there's always going to be like a way of paying, which could be like USDC or whatever, the stable coin issued on the Rose on the Oasis network, and that's why we are working with stablecoin providers to enable that. But on the data token side, I agree with you. There will be many different formats, and I don't think it would be possible to just say, oh, this is a data type 1. It costs $5 per unit. I think there's going to be, given those parameters, the system is going to give you like a price for that token, right? For that data token. So I think that has to be running on more specific DEXs.
Yeah, because we are facing the same problems when the staking derivative, because if we want to issue the fungible, we have to issue the fungible staking derivative for the stakers, so it can be tradable in the DEXs. Yeah. If we issue different types of it, so it's not going to be a standard. So it's gonna not be tradable in the DEXs, because there will be many, and there will be many. Yeah. So user cannot choose. So I think we're gonna face the same problem in the data, because there's lots of data out there, right? So yes, it's going to be, yes, we can investigate more in this direction. So we may have some thoughts on how to solve this problem. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one more questions.
Sure.
Sorry. Yeah, because we want to know what the project size think about the security of an issuer staking derivative for the stakers, because we liquidate the state assets. So we do some research. We do many research on the security of the staking derivative, but we didn't find a problem or found harmful issues on the consensus security. So maybe do you have any insights or thoughts on it? Because we think some people did not join the staking, so because they fear the lock-in period, so you cannot react to the secondary markets immediately. So you choose to stay in the wallets or stay in the exchange. So if we issue the staking derivative for the stakers, so we theoretically we're going to increase the staking ratio for the PS consensus. So people have the option, so you can choose the R token stats. So if the liquidity for the R tokens is good, so people rational people will choose the R token, right? Of course, the R token should be secure. So when the staking ratio is increased, so for this consensus, it's relatively safe. So, but I don't think any harmful issues on the consensus if we issue the staking derivative for the stakers. So do you have any concerns on it?
So what I think is that friction for token holders, no matter whether they want to stake or not, it is a huge part of the blockchain space right now. And the trade-off between getting more rewards or exposing to more like volatility issues is a big problem for DeFi. It's a big problem for proof of stake based consensuses. And in general, it's a trade-off even for people who want to deposit this money. And again, you said 7 days or more, but even sometimes for like some systems that are more centralized and do some level of yield farming, or if it's not yield farming, at least they pay you an interest on your deposit. Even in that case, there is like a waiting period that it may not be driven by lockup, but it may be driven by security, right? Sometimes they want you to whitelist an address for 24 hours, and in that 24 hours, maybe you end up losing what you gain in 1 year, right? So like this trade-off is there almost anywhere, no matter whether you approach staking, investing, or your farming, or any other aspect that you can see. I think this is the way I see it, is that this is part of the blockchain industry right now. And what I know is that there are plenty of teams that are working on reducing friction at each point of the blockchain space. And so what I think is companies like ours should be focusing on building the right technology, because there's a strong need of solving these problems. And operators all over the world can take different pieces of the blockchain architecture and try to make it better. Like, you remember back in time when it was even more complicated to get a wallet address. Now it became decently easy to get a wallet address, and someone is making even easier to manage your keys somehow. So like I think see this as a natural evolution of what the space is. I don't have too much of a specific answer, because that's not necessarily my domain of expertise. But the way I see it is that the way that I see the blockchain industry evolving is that there are a lot of companies that are taking these problems very seriously, and generally every 2 or 3 months there is a solution to each of them that creates a new problem sometimes. But it's a process that everyone is part of, and generally leads to significant improvement over a period of 6 to 8 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yes, I got answers. So I asked the same question for different peers projects founders or the researchers. So we don't have a very clear answers on that. So that I think that's the right direction we are working on it. So we have to find the answers. So yeah, that's an evolution for the crypto space.
Yeah, cool. Mm-hmm. So what is next for Staffy?
So yeah, so we are in Q4. We published our Q4 roadmap, and we are currently building our token standards, including the fees, ETH for ETH 2.0, and DOT and Kusama. And we just launched our ERC20 bridge, and we're in our SEA testnet. Welcome to our tax, and it is incentivized for if you find any bugs. So to keep transparency, we have updated our development log on our DAO forum, and it's a long road. I think it's a long road to build staking derivative, and we are looking forward for the data derivative and our collaboration with Oasis in the near future. So we are super excited about the derivative, because we are not in our vision, we are not only focused on the derivative of state assets, we focus on the derivative as deposit assets. So if data will be deposit in the casino or in the future, so I think it's one type of the deposit assets. So and it's valuable if we can get involved in it. So I think we should keep updating and keep moving on this right direction, and let's see what we're gonna do in the future. Yeah.
Cool, Liam. It was absolutely great to have you here. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I love that we kept it very colloquial. I'm looking forward to our next steps, and I'm looking forward to increasing the collaboration with you as well.
Yeah, sounds great. So, same as well.
Thank you. Hi everyone, this is Luca from Oasis. I lead the DeFi efforts at Oasis, and today is really great to have Jeremy from Balancer Protocol with us. So Jeremy, you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do at Balancer?
Sure. So I'm Jeremy Musigi, Head of Growth at Balancer Labs. A little about my background. I've been a crypto investor and researcher since 2013 as founder and CIO of Immutable Capital. And I've also previously been founder of 2 tech companies, Revenue.com and Sesh, which both were acquired. And at Balancer, I, in many ways, and through wearing many different hats, I support the community-driven growth and expansion of the Balancer protocol.
So thanks, Jeremy. Do you want to tell us a little bit of what Balancer is, what kind of problems that it solves, and what is an automated market maker in general, and what role it plays in the general DeFi ecosystem, and why that is important for the entire development?
Sure. So first off, none of this conversation is financial or investment advice of any kind, just to get that out of the way. But I'll start with the concept of an AMM, or automated market maker, which is kind of complicated, but it's a type of decentralized exchange architecture. So if you think about the stock market, which runs on an order book model, which means that there's a system that pairs buyers and sellers together in order for a trade to happen. An AMM is a different model where actually there's a smart contract that acts as a partner in every trade. So every trade that you make on an AMM platform, you're actually trading with a smart contract as opposed to a counterparty or another person. So and to elaborate on that, so these smart contracts, they contain what's called a liquidity pool. And a liquidity pool is like a stockpile of tokens that ensures that the token that you want to buy, for example, is sufficiently available so that you can make the trade that you want to make. So you're always selling one token for another token, and whatever you are looking to get in return needs to be sufficiently in supply. So that's what these liquidity pools ensure. And this makes it so that no one is stuck with an unfilled order for a long period of time. And it also has this effect where the more liquidity there is for an asset, the more resistant that asset becomes to price shocks. And the more stable then the prices are. So those are some of the general concepts of an AMM, the general reasons why AMMs exist. Balancer in particular is an AMM that is designed specifically to have very high flexibility, and that allows it to serve as a financial primitive for many different use cases. So the Balancer protocol has some core features such as, I believe we don't want to get too technical here, so I'm going to keep it high level, but you can let me know if you want me to drill further on anything. But in general, sort of in the core use cases or the core features of Balancer, we have liquidity providers who can be anyone who provides basically deposits assets into Balancer's liquidity pools. They're held in these smart contracts, and they sort of help the whole system run. And the benefit of doing that is you as an investor who puts their assets in a liquidity pool is basically getting an auto rebalancing index fund that pays you fees for holding your money, basically. And additionally, we have a liquidity mining program on the Balancer protocol right now. So liquidity providers for many of the Balancer pools are also receiving the BAL token, which we can get more into detail about what that is later. So that's how liquidity providers can interact with Balancer. On the other side, you have traders, of course. So Balancer acts as a decentralized exchange. So traders come to Balancer to make trades with high liquidity and with minimal slippage, meaning that they would get the best price possible, and that's what Balancer is really designed to do. And the third type of user that will interact with Balancer is arbitragers. So, and again, keeping it high level, one of the things that is crucial to the design, the functionality of Balancer is that all liquidity pools on Balancer must maintain a certain set balance. And when they are out of balance, which occurs naturally as trades are made, that actually opens up an opportunity for an arbitrager to come in and profit from those imbalances, and by doing that, they actually put those pools back into balance. So, that's kind of like the core functionality, which is the liquidity pools and how they serve functions to different types of users. But really, Balancer is actually a lot more than that. Balancer is it's a building block for DeFi, our decentralized exchange not only supports direct trading through like the Balancer interface, but it also supports dApps throughout the DeFi ecosystem that need liquidity, and that can be, for example, DEX aggregators or smart wallets that allow you to make trades or different types of transactions within their interface, but on the back end they're sending that through Balancer. And then we also have what are called smart pools on Balancer, which unlock really like endless use cases. I feel like today, which is still very early in Balancer's life as a protocol, we've really only kind of discovered as a community some of these use cases, but there are already some really exciting ones. So I'll give you some examples. There's a team called PyDAO, which has used Balancer's infrastructure to create managed index funds, which they offer to the market in the form of a tokenized asset. And that tokenized asset that you can buy is a way for you to hold a diversified investment in a portfolio of different assets just through one token. And they've created different types of portfolios, different types of these like managed index funds that are represented by different PyDAO tokens. And all of that is made possible by the Balancer protocol. And all of that is built on top of the Balancer protocol. Another example is there are some really popular dApps such as 1inch Exchange and Zapper.fi. Both of those teams integrated their technology with Balancer so that while users are on their platform using the various functions and features that they offer, some of the features that they can also interact with is to directly make trades through Balancer, and also to directly add or remove liquidity from pools that are on Balancer within the interface, within the experience of that application itself. And I'll give you a couple more examples. There's a team called Perpetual Protocol, which used Balancer recently to actually conduct a token sale. They were launching their brand new PERP token, and they did this through what's called an LBP, or a liquidity bootstrapping pool. Without getting too complicated, that is a certain configuration of a Balancer pool that lets you set a specific window of time where you are allowing people to buy your token through a token sale mechanism. And this allows that process to happen in a way that's very transparent and fair, so that all of the members of the community of a crypto protocol have a chance to invest and participate and be an active owner in the network. And I'll just give one last one, which is smart treasuries. Kind of mind-blowing, really. It's an idea that came from one of our lead investors at Placeholder, Joel Venegro. He wrote a really interesting blog about this recently on the Placeholder blog. But the general idea is that you can actually use a balancer pool to act as a treasury fund for your crypto protocol, and to manage that, you manage your treasury assets in a way that best optimizes the liquidity of your token and the way that you sort of spend and manage your funds. So definitely recommend looking into that, but I think it would be too long for this conversation.
Yeah, and that's great. Thanks for this explanation. I think it's really great that you explain both how Balancer solves a lot of problems related to traders and people who have that immediate incentive, and also at the same time serves developers who are trying to embed a new set of DeFi applications that are powered by protocols. At Oasis, the thing that I want to say here, we love to work with companies that have this level of connotation, because people who will come and build application on the Oasis network, the one thing they really care about is finding places that and a set of preset integrations that somehow will enable the next generation of DeFi applications that they want to build. So we feel this is really in line with what Oasis tries to accomplish. So moving to the aspects that you are finding challenging, or that Balancer is finding challenging, in terms of like solving the main problems that you are facing today, I'd be particularly interested in understanding what kind of problems you guys are tackling on a daily basis, with a particular reference to what do you think is needed to bring more and more users to DeFi, and where do you see the next wave of DeFi growing, let's say?
Yeah, so I think, Balancer really thrives when the developer community, like startups, enterprises, entrepreneurs, and all different kinds of people involved in software development and smart contract development get involved and use our infrastructure to build useful applications. And that's a big reason for our growth thus far, is how different teams have really looked at our technology and come up with a way that they can use it to either build something or to enhance something that they built. So some of our top focuses right now are number one, making it as cost efficient as possible for traders to execute trades on Balancer. And traders can be individual people, but they can also be applications, they can be systems that are trading tokens through some part of their underlying functionality. So that's the first thing. And second thing is making it as easy as possible to integrate with Balancer and to build on Balancer. So, we're really addressing that in how we are designing Balancer V2. So right now, Balancer V1 is the first version of Balancer, which is currently live today. And in V2, we're making some changes to the technical architecture of the system, which will really optimize the cost of each transaction by optimizing the amount of gas that's required, also making major improvements in the ease of integration with Balancer. And but I also think another aspect of the question that you're asking is, like, in the bigger grand ecosystem, the bigger picture of DeFi, what's needed, what needs to happen in order for growth to continue and to accelerate beyond its current rate. So I think the first most obvious one is scalability and high throughput are really crucial requirements for DeFi to really reach its potential, and that's something that's really holding DeFi back right now on the Ethereum blockchain. And so despite all the things that are great about Ethereum, it's really struggling on the scalability side. And that's something that needs to be solved one way or another. And of course, there are many different solutions that are being worked on and proposed. And there are other teams like Oasis Network that are offering a solution that could potentially be that alternative. And I think, we need to continue to improve the user experience. We need to continue to improve the ease of use of DeFi applications. I think that as a space in general, as an industry, we've been making great progress on that side. But that is something that certainly needs to continue, and many other factors, but those are two important ones.
That's great to hear. I agree with you. Like, clearly, scalability is possibly the most obvious one. We also have an interesting angle of scale. Scalability often is sort of mistaken with number of transactions only, but reality is that the effect that not having scalability, let me say this with other words, not having scalability is causing some side effects that are strongly limiting participation of a bigger pool of people. I can think of transaction costs, of course, directly, but also the ability of engaging partners that already have huge distribution. And maybe one thing I can think of is more technologically advanced fintech companies, let's say. They cannot even touch DeFi because it would be really, really impossible. So we really believe that is one of the aspects. We clearly think that privacy also plays a role there. And when we think of privacy at Oasis, we generally think of privacy as a combination of mainly two aspects. The first one is the ability of protecting trades and protecting commercial interests and everything that has to do with putting, not revealing strategies and all these aspects. But also the second part of our definition of privacy has to do with the ability of building this data liquidity layer, if you want to call it like that is controlled by the user, and it's put at the service of protocols on top. And here we can think of credit score, like decentralized and queryable credit score, or some level of reputational system. And again, it would be a completely separate conversation. But I wanted to get your sense on whether the role of privacy in DeFi is something we should be expecting as one of the engines of the next generation of DeFi apps.
Yeah, I think on a philosophical level, personally, I feel that privacy is a critical human right. I think everyone should have the option to protect their privacy. And I think it's great to see that, the Oasis team has made that such a priority in the fundamental design of the Oasis network. I think that's, a really great property of the protocol. And I think that, as you mentioned, there are certain really important use cases in society that really, probably wouldn't make sense on a blockchain or on a protocol that is not, that does not offer the option for privacy. Privacy of data, privacy of transactions. I think credit score is a great example. I think when it comes to health information, health records, that's also something that we may eventually see being brought onto the blockchain, but there needs to be privacy protections for that to really be done right, and for people to feel comfortable with it. Certainly that's something that I would want to keep private. So yeah, I think layer one solutions that offer privacy can certainly take the lead in onboarding those use cases that are very sensitive to privacy into the decentralized blockchain-based world. maybe most quickly, and take advantage of that opportunity, while other blockchains that are fully public, maybe don't have a straightforward solution for that.
Yeah, thanks for that. We also noticed that, clearly we echo everything you just said. We also noticed that the absence of privacy, or maybe the presence of full transparency, let's say the other way around, has the side effect of incentivizing behaviors of maybe more, let's call them self-motivated, perhaps miners and traders, that sort of take advantage of this component of Ethereum to, front run or other behaviors that may not be working in the interest of, let's say, the masses. So we also think that privacy, on top of being a human right and on top of being very relevant for a lot of applications, as you just said, which again is exactly why we exist. But we also notice that this recent tendency of the ability of using privacy as an enabler for protecting against some of the behaviors that the community in general doesn't like, right? So going to the joint grant that Oasis and Balancer are issuing, and here, for people who are not familiar with that, given that we just announced it, Oasis and Balancer are issuing a joint grant to develop and experiment how Balancer would perform on the Oasis network. So I was curious to hear more from you, what are your expectations, and let's say if you can elaborate more about this idea of issuing this grant and working with Oasis to make that happen.
Sure. So yeah, first some background on the Balancer Ecosystem Fund, which is making this possible. This is really a vehicle for supporting projects that we think can help grow and enhance the Balancer ecosystem. So it's such an important part of building the long-term future and growth of Balancer. And the way that it works, sort of briefly, is the Balancer community votes to approve batches of grants. And once we have a live batch of grants that's been approved, we then really open up to the community for proposals, and anyone can make a proposal for a project that they would like to build, that they think would bring value to the Balancer ecosystem, and to receive funding for it. And it's a really amazing win-win situation where members of the community, and this is anyone, anyone who's interested in Balancer can be a member of the Balancer community, and anyone who has an idea can really get involved and propose something. On the opposite side, there are also specific ideas that have already been that the community or the Balancer Labs team has discussed or come up with that we think would be really awesome for someone to build. So we also will be soon getting more involved in offering bounties for a specific project with a specific definition, and putting that out to the community for people to come in and basically claim that bounty and take on that project. So and as far as the status of the grant program, we just completed our first batch, and we'll be making a proposal to the Balancer community to approve a second batch very soon, which would be a really exciting opportunity to continue to promote growth in this way. And specifically, the Oasis grant is an opportunity for us to provide funding for community development of Balancer on the Oasis network. And this is something that we are excited to put out there, so that teams that have the expertise to make this happen can come in and offer that expertise to win this project, to complete specified milestones that Balancer and Oasis together will define for these projects and for the specific features, functions, etc. that we would be looking for. And this is an opportunity for us to, as you said, experiment and learn from how Balancer performs on Oasis, leveraging its unique properties that are different from the Ethereum protocol where Balancer primarily is. And this is like kind of a combination for us of a research project today, but also an investment in the future. If Oasis can really grow and build a strong DeFi ecosystem, then Balancer can play a role in that and helping bringing liquidity on chain, and that would be something really exciting.
Yeah, likewise. This is exactly why I think Balancer and Oasis got together. Like there was this mutual vision of issuing a grant to the community and involving the community in the development of this protocol on the Oasis. I think it's been great working with you guys because you've been very open about trying to support, I mean, clearly if the community approves that, but try to support the development and try to support the company that is going to come and build this integration, providing your expertise and maybe like helping in a few very important elements that will significantly speed up the development. On our side, we also have our community grant program that is meant to like foster and support early stage builders. So I think the mutual interest there in order to A, build Balancer on Oasis, B, learn from the privacy needs, the privacy aspects, the scalability benefits, and all this like package that can serve Balancer with a new set of properties, as I just said, I think is extremely exciting for us. And that was the reason why we invested a lot of energy in this, because we thought the alignment of intents was extremely like strong and powerful. So thanks a lot for supporting that. I bet everyone is really excited to move this forward. So I think we are almost out of time. I wanted to ask you, what's next for DeFi? I would have asked you what's next for Balancer, but you already referenced that before with the Balancer V2. We're all very excited to see that coming to life. Maybe like a closing thought on what's next for DeFi and what do you think is going to happen in the next period of time?
Yeah, so I think that probably definitely one of the big areas for evolution in DeFi is governance, decentralized governance. I think that during this last year or so, a lot of really interesting progress has been made, and projects have really gone out and pushed the limits on pushing towards a more decentralized future and putting more and more power into the hands of the community to make decisions in deciding the future of these protocols each day. So I think that I'm very excited about that. I also think that it's still very early. I think there's a lot of research, a lot of learning, a lot of experimentation, a lot of mistakes that will generally are going to happen in the ecosystem and that we'll all learn from, so that we can continue to iterate and improve on how we handle decentralized governance. As I mentioned before, scaling issues are top of the list of priorities to be solved in DeFi. And I think, overall, I'm expecting growth to continue. We've seen so much new liquidity, so much new capital flow into DeFi during this recent boom cycle. And, even after things calm down, a lot of that new liquidity has remained, which shows you that there's real growth happening. This is not a flash that happens and then disappears. This is like legitimate progress. So I think that's all stuff to be really excited about.
I agree. I think DeFi became stronger. I was personally not a big fan of that slide total number of dollars locked in DeFi. I didn't think it was like a super great representation of the growth of DeFi because it was too attached to the dollar value and growth and up to. It's much more important, which is there's been waves of DeFi, and no matter what, liquidity has been there. People haven't pulled back. The growth is real. The growth is there. And I think we're all excited because this is probably like the very first moment where DeFi is proving to be like maybe stronger than what some sort of people or skeptics were actually thinking. So that's extremely excited. We're all in this together. We'll make this industry definitely more and more advanced as we speak and as we enable more and more collaborations. We're very excited to move this to the next steps. Thanks a lot for this early engagement, and we're looking forward to the next steps. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you. Good to speak with you, Luca.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is Luca from Oasis. Oasis is a layer one blockchain focused on open money and open data. And today it's my pleasure to have Xiaohan from Meter, a DeFi infrastructure with integrated low volatility coin.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for having me today, Luca. And it's our great pleasure to work with project like Oasis as well. Yeah. So in terms of myself, I'm an engineer with a finance background. I started my first 15 of my years of my career in engineering and R&D. And then I went to Wharton to get my MBA. After that, I started to do like investment, for example, from 2016, I started a VC fund. One of our investment focus was blockchain and fintech. That's how I got into the space. And in 2018, after we deployed the first fund, I feel I'm like a builder at heart. So I enjoy like building more than like investing. So I got into what I believe is like a mega trend, basically crypto, and started working on the project Meter. So for Meter, basically started from day one, we are like trying to create like a DeFi infrastructure that with a built-in low volatility coin, or you can see as like say as a stable coin. Basically, the goal is to have a crypto native stable coin and like address some of the scalability issues, and also connecting with other blockchains, especially like layer one blockchains as a layer two solution. Basically can allow different crypto asset to flow freely and interact with each other. Yeah, so that's a high level of what Meter does.
Thank you. That's extremely interesting, and I love how you're building a flexible solution that can be both a layer one and a layer two as needed. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about what it means to be a layer one blockchain or a layer one stablecoin in your case?
Yeah.
And I'm asking this question because, of course, I think everyone is most used to see a stablecoin as something built on top of a network, while your case is very unique because of this property. So you want to tell us more?
Yeah, definitely. So if you look at most of the stablecoin today, there are like, for example, ERC20 coins built with a smart contract. But from our perspective, because when we first started like crypto, the goal was for Bitcoin was to create like independent currency, independent of the fiat system. So if you look at like a financial system, currency is actually one of the most fundamental building blocks. And if you're building your skyscraper on top of basically like for example, if you build your currency as like application layers, there are all kinds of potential vulnerabilities. For example, like there are a lot of smart contract attacks that people have been experienced so far, and also it's very difficult to be like fully decentralized. For example, if you look at like USDT, USDC, they all have like something called like a owner key or like administrator key. They can like lock your account, block transactions, things like that. So when we do the currency at like layer 1, basically that's the highest level of security blockchain could give, and that ensures basically the currency have the best security available to the upper level financial system. So that's why we believe there's a necessity for like a layer 1 type of currency. And also we can discuss about this later because we changed the consensus design for cryptocurrencies. It's actually become very difficult or like almost impossible to build it without touching the layer 1. So that forced us to be like layer 1 as well. But even though we're like a layer 1 blockchain, we understand like basically stablecoin need to be used in all kinds of financial transaction scenarios, right? So it need to be integrated into other blockchains. So that's why when we connect to other blockchains, we will functioning more like a fully Ethereum compatible layer 2 and interacting with other blockchains as a sidechain. So that's a way we're viewing ourselves to be used in other blockchains.
All right, so I'm very curious to hear more about this consensus mechanism that you referenced to before, and also about the unique use cases that Meter can enable. And I know a little bit about it, and I'm very excited to hear that from you. But before even going into that, with all the stablecoin adoption, and with the other stablecoin that are either coming to the market or are there in the market and growing in usage, I'm very curious to start from really understanding why Meter and how Meter is different from other players in the space.
Sure. So if you look at all the stablecoin on the market today, other than like the layer 1, layer 2, layer 1 or smart contract we described just now, there's also a fundamental like difference is almost all the stablecoin today are like in fact pegged coins. Basically, they're either pegged to US dollar or pegged to like gold or something else, for example. But let's say giving like the US dollar as an example, based on international finance theory, basically in order to create like a real pegged coin, there is only 2 ways to do it. The first way is the Chinese way. Basically, you do not allow free flow of capital. Obviously, no one likes it. The other way is the Hong Kong way. So basically, you have 100% reserve in the currency you peg to. Then you can basically do like always basically do the recovery, like do the exchange. So that's theoretically only 2 valid way to maintain a peg. So from that perspective, if we do the Hong Kong way, that's basically USDT, USDC type of approach. That can only be a centralized approach because you need to have a centralized entity to manage that centralized pool. That pool cannot be break up. Once it breaks up, it actually can no longer maintain the peg at scale. The other, the other possibility people are trying to experiment is using like crypto as collaterals. But there's fundamental capacity issues because of this. Because of the international finance theory I mentioned, because you're fundamentally not using the currency you're pegging to. That's why, like, for example, when DAI tried to use Ethereum as or other like crypto asset as collateral, they have restrictions on the amount of Ethereum, for example, can be used as collateral. Because if there are too many Ethereums used as collateral for DAI, then during a potential liquidation scenario, a lot of Ethereums will be sold on the market on the DEX, and that basically will create an avalanche effect, causing the entire market to collapse. So basically, that's why they have certain limitations on the capacity of the DAI issuance and the amount of Ethereum or other cryptocurrencies in their entire circulation can be used as collaterals. So basically, another issue is they have to rely on Oracle, which is typically a centralized approach, because even you have different ways of decentralize your validators, like data feeders, but fundamentally good data source, there's only very limited number of good data sources available in this world. So that naturally become a centralized approach. So that's a issue for the basically crypto collateral based like a stable coin. So the way Meter doing this is basically, if you look at the international finance theory, basically there's something called the impossible trinity. So basically fixed exchange rate, free flow of capital, and the independent monetary policy. These three things cannot be coexist at the same time, right? So basically we give up on the fixed exchange rate part and take the other two sides. Basically, by doing that, we give up the strong peg to $1, but we have a fixed production cost for proof of work mining. So if you look at proof of work miners, especially Bitcoin miners, basically they're all profit driven. So whenever there's a profit, if a mining a coin, there's a profit, they will go mining that coin. For example, if you look at the BSV, BCH, and the BTC, consistently there's miners arbitraging and moving hash rate around in these three coins because they share the same hash rate algorithms. So basically, when we design Meter, we basically create a algorithm, and at the low level, basically whenever you burn around 10 kilowatt hour of electricity with mainstream Bitcoin miners, on average you can create one coin. So that's more like a fixed production cost for the miners. And then if the market price is higher for the coin, there's more margin for the miners. The miner will deploy more hash rate. And when the market price drops, the miner basically will notice there's not enough margin for them, and they will basically move out the hash rate, and the production will drop, bring the system to a dynamic equilibrium. Also, we have an internal mechanism to basically consistently consume the low volatility coins created by the miner. So basically that dynamic will create a systematic equilibrium that will settle more on the marginal production cost for the coin. So for example, when we do 10 kilowatt hour of electricity for mining a coin, so at the end of the day, the price of that coin will gradually, in a competitive environment, settles around the cost of electricity, the global competitive cost of electricity for that coin.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, so basically we're using the same algorithm as the Bitcoin, the SHA-256, for creating the low volatility coin. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you give us an answer that started from a more higher level problem and then went deeper into understanding what are the nuances of the technical aspects of some of the other protocols and coins that you mentioned. And this brings me to my next question, which is you have a very interesting and unique consensus mechanism based on different elements.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very curious to hear that from you directly, how that works. How did you come up with this design model, and what kind of benefits does this mechanism allow?
Yeah, so basically, if you look at all existing cryptocurrency today, so you will notice at the consensus layer, basically, they are mixing two things. They're mixing currency creation with record keeping. Basically, the newly created currency is a reward for validators or miners to maintain the ledger. But fundamentally, there are two consensus going on in the system. So one consensus is like maintaining the record to prevent double spending. So that's what the Satoshi's white paper is mainly talking about. But this actually doesn't require a lot of energy. Basically, you just need to make sure the information are thoroughly propagated in the system and agreed upon. There's another consensus going on in the system that's actually implicit and potentially can be very energy consuming. That's like economic consensus on basically what's the value of newly created coin and how much new value has been added into the system. So in a proof of work system, basically miners are doing that through like competition with their hashing powers. And they are reaching consensus on the value of the newly created, let's say Bitcoin or Ethereum. But on a proof of stake system, there's actually people like basically didn't really care about the economic consensus. Basically, the inflation of the system is just an arbitrary value typically set by the developer and sometimes can be adjusted by the community. So basically, the way we look at the problem is since if you look at the history, the miners for gold and silver were never the same group of people as bankers and accountants, right? Why do you mix up the two and creating unnecessarily conflict of interest? So essentially, we separate the two consensus and actually have two coins represents the two consensus as well. So basically, we use proof of work to create the low volatility coin and have a fixed production cost and have miners to basically arbitrage with their hashing powers. But naturally, the hashing power of the system will not be stable, and we cannot rely on it for security purpose. So we use basically proof of stake based hot stuff consensus for record keeping. So we have another coin, we call it the governance coin. So basically that's a staking coin to be a validator. And like we're running like a hot stuff consensus among the validators. So we can support like hundreds of nodes doing like second level like finality and very high performance. So basically when we do that, we realize actually we can combine the benefits of both worlds. Because the economic model we created for proof of work, most of the concern for proof of work is waste of energy, right? But like because of we redesigned the economic game, so the hash rate in the system no longer like correlates to the price of the coin, because the price of coin is more or less like fixed. It actually only correlates to the number of new coins needed in the system. So only the increment of market cap requires this proof of work consensus. We actually did a calculation in order to support like a US economy size of like economic entity. The annual mining cost will be similar to the annual budget for US Mint and US Engrave and Print. So it can be as efficient as fiat. And also proof of stake wise, we have higher performance, like fast finality. And also we can avoid the distribution issues for proof of stake. Because in a proof of stake system, like a lot of people complaining after the initial distribution, because the people have a lot of coins, can staking and keep on getting these coins. So it's very difficult to get decentralized if the original holders doesn't sell. But the way we distribute the governance token or the staking coin is we have like daily competitive on-chain auctions, and like the users have to use the low volatility coin, we call it the meter, to exchange, to bid for the newly created governance coin. So it's more like the governance coin is the real Bitcoin. The low volatility coin is the mining credit. In Bitcoin, basically miners use hash rate to directly compete for the newly created Bitcoin. But in Meter, people convert their hashing rate into the mining credit and use the mining credit as a financial tool to compete for the newly created governance token. So basically, that will create consumption for the currency coin as well. Yeah. So basically, that addressed the distribution issue for proof of stake system as well. So that's why we feel this is like a very interesting experiment that like we should definitely try it in a like crypto currency environment. And yeah, that's how we started the project in 2018, and finally launched the project, the mainnet, in July this year.
And I think on top of looking at the cryptocurrency environment, right? You also invested more energy into the DeFi space, right? So you zoomed in from like solving a problem from the cryptocurrency space to actually specializing a little bit more into the DeFi space. So I'm very curious, when you think of the DeFi space in general, how do you see the role of stablecoins, and what would be, I don't want to say the next generation of stablecoins, but let's say, where do you see, like, what do you see all this change that is happening in the stablecoin that you're bringing, that other companies are bringing? How do you see this change improve the actual DeFi space?
Yeah. So basically, the fundamental like building blocks for DeFi, one of the most important building blocks of DeFi is like lending, borrowing and lending. Actually, this sector will not exist without like a stable coin, because like for example, without a stable coin, how do you calculate the interest, right? It doesn't make sense to charge interest on a like on a volatile asset. Everything will become like so whack. And so basically, without stablecoin, there will be no DeFi essentially. And in terms of like the future for stablecoin, so basically we see the regulatory, basically the regulations for stablecoin will become more and more strict, especially in the U.S. For example, if you look at the recent activities, the U.S. government or like financial regulators have imposed to USDT. You can see this trend, right? So we see this getting more and more strict. So one of the benefit of like the meter type of solution is, we're not saying we're trying to replace like USDT or other like USDC like immediately, because I mean like there's definitely like bigger use cases for like USD pegged stable coins, but we would like to bring an alternative, and that doesn't have because it's like a proof of work mining created, and from day one it's completely decentralized. So even we don't have any pre-mine or like anything with a low volatility coin. We call it MTR in Meter. So everyone have to mine. So basically, because of this nature, it avoids like a lot of regulatory concerns, and because of it's using like a global competitive electricity as a ruler. It's interesting wise, it's purchasing power wise very stable over the last 60, 70 years, and it can avoid so many like regulatory concerns of the fiat-backed stablecoin. So we believe it can bring at least a very interesting alternative for crypto, for the DeFi space. And also, like we're using this low volatility coin as like transactions fees paying gases within the Meter blockchain. So it's at least we'll be like using this as building our chain as a fundamental block. Yeah, and basically all the DeFi applications built on Meter can have an alternative stable coin essentially.
And exciting to see how you interpret this difference between some types of stablecoin and the way they actually enable different types of lending. One thing you said at the beginning is that lending on a volatile asset doesn't make too much sense. I love to think that way. I love to think this in a way that reflects the market segmentation. There is a population that already has crypto assets, maybe like Bitcoin, Ethereum, or other tokens,
Mhm.
and they don't want to sell it, but they want to get more out of these tokens, which basically solves this very old situation where there is one side of the market that has an excess of capital, and there is another side of the market that has a need for additional capital, and maybe
Yeah.
this would be the case of like compound. And then there's another side of the population, which maybe is like way bigger potentially, that has simply like stable assets. You can say dollar, you can say like euros, you can say all the other currencies potentially that maybe like fit more into the model that you're trying to solve. And I'm very excited to do this because like personally and as a company Oasis, we strongly believe the evolution of DeFi in general will probably not going to be inside DeFi, but it's probably going to be outside of DeFi. And the second this boundaries between DeFi and non-DeFi are gonna be broken, that's probably where we're gonna see this shift to mass adoption. And we're trying to position ourselves there. We think that one of the key elements for this is privacy. And the way we see it is we think that privacy is, privacy in terms of privacy of the smart contract is actually something that encourages participation of institutions, helps as well fight some of the problems that full transparency is causing, like high fees and front running being some of those.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm very interested in learning more from you. How do you see the role of privacy in the evolution of DeFi, and also the roadmap that Meter is going for?
Yeah, so basically, like we believe privacy is extremely important. There's actually different segments of the market, right? So certain applications you want full transparency. For example, if you're transacting with a like completely unknown person, you want to be like fully transparent. So like to avoid like either side is cheating. But there's another like segment, basically when you're trying to do certain transactions, you don't want other people to see it. For example, like paying some like important business partners that have like relationship with you, or like a certain type of strategy you're building. You don't want the people to like just observe and steal your intellectual properties, right? So that type of applications definitely requires privacy. And when we build Meter, because we're targeting currency type of applications, we want to be fully transparent. That's why we don't have any like layer one built-in type of privacy. We believe the privacy type of like enhancement is better to collaborate with other chains, or basically building on top of what we, after we create the currency. For example, like once the currency is created, you can send it to other parties in a like completely private channel, or like you can put it in a smart contract executing in a like a private and secure way. So that's why we believe the collaboration with Oasis will be like a great fit. And also interconnecting with Oasis is like pretty straightforward, because basically you guys, I believe you guys are based on like the Tendermint code base, right? So basically there is a finality and easy to do like cross-chain communications with Meter, which also have a finality. And basically Dawn is very active in IC3, and we are very active in IC3 as well. So basically like there are a lot of synergies in between. Yeah, so yeah, that's why we believe Oasis will be like a great partner.
That's very good to hear. Of course, as a network and as a company that builds on top of that network, we are trying to be selective on one side and open on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So we love to see and we love to hear what you just said. I think you also raised one very important distinction that we love, which is privacy doesn't mean hiding information, but privacy means the ability of writing applications that can be keeping information private to the people or to the entities that need to have access to that information, and not to the people or to the entities that don't have to have access to that information, and at the same time offer still the ability of writing public information and transparent information whenever needed. So we
yeah, so basically, if you look at like I would say 90% of today's business transactions are private, right?
Right.
Like the parties doesn't want to expose everything to the public. So I think that will bring like more the traditional like business cases into blockchain. Yeah.
That's right. That's what we believe. That's what we're investing on, and that's how
Mhm.
we are designing the first version of the network for sure. All right, we're getting to the end. I wanted to ask you one more thing, which is where is Meter going? What's next for Meter? What are the next steps there?
Yeah. So basically, for us, since we're like basically wrapping up the layer 1 development, so we are actually releasing one more release today. Basically, it will fully support like, for example, user can use MetaMask or like traditional Ethereum wallet to interact with Meter. Basically, we added like emulation layer for Ethereum on top of our layer 1, and all the smart contract will be able to run on Meter freely. So basically, after we complete this, the next phase is basically building more application-oriented approach. Basically, first we need to like build bridges to interact with other blockchains. We already built a bridge to like interact with Ethereum, and we'll be building one for like interacting with Oasis as well. So basically, allow our tokens to freely flow to other blockchains. And then the next phase is the next focus is basically building more DeFi-oriented applications. So we already launching a new like a market making engine. Basically, if you look at today's like Uniswap, basically it's using a more like a fixed formula type of thing to basically try to create the price based on how many tokens on individual pools. For example, for like ETH USD, you have like a ETH pool and a USDT pool. The market making engine assumes the two have the same value. So basically, we create a more a different approach. Basically, we use like data feed from oracles and also Uniswap itself to get the market price quote for our market making engine. So even the user doesn't provide a balanced like liquidity pool for the market making engine, it can still matching the price and provide a good liquidity, which allows people to provide liquidity with exposure to just one side. So basically, to reduce the impermanent losses for the market making engines. So basically, this is just one of the applications we're developing. So it will initially launch on Ethereum and later move to Meter. And we have other like applications under development as well. So basically, our strategy is to, instead of like trying to push Meter as a layer 1 to solve everything, we focus more like a application and user-oriented approach to create several like applications to attract users, and then basically hiding the Meter complexity of layer 1 at the back end. Yeah, so that's a strategy we're pushing Meter.
Congrats. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there.
Yeah.
It must not be easy, but the beautiful part of the blockchain space is that there's so much collaboration happening.
Yep.
That really like we can build strong partnerships and help each other. All right, that concludes this fireside chat. Thanks a lot for being with us. We are very excited to partner together.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, great to partner with Oasis, and looking forward to work closely together.
Thank you. Likewise, of course. Thanks.
Thank you.